consultation with Seattle Nanny, and then we hired the first one that we met. So that wasn't my intent by any means, but we were just really impressed with her. I think I did meet with one after her just because I was like, let's make Seattle Nanny do their job.
For sure.
But yeah, and then Isabel was interviewing other places and we didn't want to let her go. So it wasn't a long process for us.
Teammates are like oxygen.
Beautiful.
They can pump you up
Yeah!
or calm you down. Teammates stand proud with you, so you can finally exhale. And the best teammates never let you forget to breathe.
For more than 60 years, Symetra Life Insurance Company has helped people breathe a little easier. With retirement, benefits, and life insurance products, Symetra is your teammate for whatever lies ahead.
For every kid that didn't have a chance, and every kid that was out of options, Seattle Children's is fighting for you. Because this isn't about beating the odds. It's about changing them for all kidkind.
My name is Laura Kastner, and I'm delighted to join Parent Ed Talks as your series moderator. I am a clinical professor in psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the University of Washington. I am the author of books on child development and adolescence for parents, and I have a clinical practice in which I see children and couples and families. On behalf of Parent Map, we are thrilled to have put together some of the best parenting media in the country: Chicago Parent, Metro Parent, New York Family, and Staten Island Parent, to bring you this year's Parent Ed Talk series. It's our collective purpose to help build inclusive, safe, educated, and loving communities for our families. We are focused on how to better serve families, and we never settle for the status quo. Before starting today's topic, Parenting SOS, answers to your burning questions, please take a moment and let us know what city you're joining us from. And if you could, put it in the chat, that little button at the bottom of the screen. We love to see where you're joining us from. Kenmore, New York, Chicago, San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle, Mercer Island, Vancouver, Bronx. Hello to the Bronx. Great. I was born in New York, so I love to welcome people from New York. I hail from many places. So if you're joining us for the first time, you'll notice that we're doing something a little different this time. Our format is different. For the first hour, I'm going to be answering questions from 4 real-life parents and discussing their questions. And then I'll take 30 minutes afterwards to answer questions from the attendees. So it's going to be an hour with the 4 parents joining us. And then I'll switch over to Q&A, answering your questions. So it'll be 90 minutes. So joining us as our first parent, we have Deborah Grover, who will be joining us when she pops on. Hi, Deb. Thank you for joining us. So could you tell us a little bit about your family, and that'll lead into your question?
Of course. I live in just outside the Seattle area with my husband, and I have 2 teens, one that is 17, a senior in high school, and a 19-year-old son as a freshman in college.
Okay. And so you've already gone through many stages that some of our listeners have not gone through. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that path and your questions?
Sure. Yeah, so this is my first year beginning my empty nest journey and supporting my son away at college and my daughter home, finishing up her senior year in high school. And lots of ups and downs, and it's a wild ride, this phase of parenting. But my question for you is, my son identifies as an LGBTQ teen, and I'd love to know more about the most important thing I can do to show support for my son as we kind of go hand in hand navigating this journey together.
Well, I think I'm probably going to answer that the way everybody in my field would, and that is nothing's more important than unconditional love. We also call it secure attachment, which means being a steady, caring, trusted adult in their family life. And we also call it, radical acceptance. So there are lots of words for it, but I use the word secure attachment, which is the operationalization of the kind of love that is trusting and steady. So that's part of it. And I'd like to know more about some of the obstacles that you might have faced and how you navigated through them.
Thank you for that. First of all, that's good to hear, because that's what we're doing, is that unconditional love approach. I think some of the obstacles, making sure that he is armed with the information and resources that he needed when, in high school, to feel supported and feel loved beyond just our household. So like in the school community and accessing resources there, or being with other kids. Sometimes that was really helpful to have be around other kids that identified similarly to him. Sometimes that was useful, sometimes it was not.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, through the college exploration process, picking where he wanted to be. And certainly his identity factored into that. Where would he feel safe? Where would he feel accepted? Where could he be himself?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When do you think can you think of times, because we're all going to go, I know I can recount the hitting the skids at various points with my kids going through adolescence. Can you name and describe a particular time where you thought, oh, I'm just brought to my knees on this one?
Yeah, I think, so one of the ones that comes to mind for me was trying to get out ahead of pronouns and the name that he wanted to have used. And so, how do you, as a parent, allow him to, so, okay, let me give it a specific example. I remember going to the orthodontist and feeling a need to dive in ahead of him and stop at the reception desk before he knew what I was doing to say, hey guys, heads up. This is really important for you to acknowledge these things when you see him, if it comes up. And I felt so silly, but I also felt like a mama bear trying to protect him. And, they were, we're in a very open, liberal place. And so of course they already had procedures and protocol in place when a kid or a parent came to them with that. But it was just I always felt like I was skidding in right before, because I didn't want him to see me doing it, because I didn't want him to feel different. But also I wanted them to be, respectful, and I wanted him to feel safe. There were a number of occasions beyond the orthodontist where that happened. But then I had this kind of aha moment of, okay, well, he's going to be going to college, and I'm not going to have any sense or idea of what environments he's going to find himself in. And I need to teach him how to do that, or how to weather if it doesn't go his way, or if he feels something, somebody incorrectly labels him, or presents a microaggression, or whatever or if he doesn't feel safe, or whatever the case may be. And we're still navigating that. He's a freshman, and for the most part, it's gone well. But it's interesting.
You're talking about how you're advocating for him, wanting him to learn how to advocate for himself.
That's right.
And watching, does the environment allow for that, or do I need to move in? Right.
That's right. And if it doesn't, what does that mean? And how do we navigate that together? And do I step back and let him step in? Or, it's a tricky little tightrope walk of a parent of a late teen.
given what happens, in making this really germane to many people worried about their marginalized child, whether it's race or disability or any kind of difference, I'm sure a lot of parents can really identify with this. And the other thing is, anytime you have any kind of difference, you're wondering about mental health. I mean, everybody's worried about mental health with the stats that have come out since COVID. And then anytime you have a special situation of any kind, you're worried that much more as a parent. Did you have moments that you were worried about his mental health?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I don't like the saying, but I also believe the saying of you're only as happy as your least happiest kid. I'm trying to break away from that as a parent, which is in my second question for you, we'll get to later. But I think, I worry about that all the time. And there's definitely ups and downs. And I think, COVID was a challenge. And, going through kind of the transformation of figuring out who you are as a teenager, no matter what those characteristics are, it's stressful. And it's stressful to try on those hats in front of other teens and in front of, out in the greater community and in the public. And there were definitely up and downs with mental health.
Yeah. Well, a lot of parents will be wondering, like, how do I size up their mental health? And I've come to reflect on mental health very much like I do just optimal adolescent development, Deb. And in my last couple of books, I had 7 chapters to make it real basic because I really like the number 7. And I was just counting through, this is what we were always thinking about with well-being or doing well or hopefully even thriving. We're looking at it's an acronym of aspects of mental health, aspects of successful outcomes, and research-based. These things predict good outcomes. And it's, academically doing well enough or thriving, A for academics, then social relationships and friendships, P for physical fitness and physical wellness, which includes sleep and eating and exercise and movement and so forth. And then emotional well-being, emotional flourishing, emotional moods and handling those. And then C for character. A lot of people don't bring in character. And yet we don't want just smart kids and good and well kids. We want good kids that care about others, character development. And then T for trust in that secure attachment, that secure adult, that represented by the relationship with the parent. And S for self-regulation. Have they internalized those rules and those controls that we have a lot of in early childhood, which we're going to get to next, and then pull those off so that they can self-regulate. They can pay attention to rules and do what they need to do even without us around and regulate their moods. So those would be when you think about your path, which one did you worry about the most of those 7? Worry about or struggle with or manage?
I think, the self-regulation piece, if I had to pick one, and you're talking about for my son, one of the things that I would always come back to with him is, first of all, modeling self-regulation. And I felt like that was really important, but also just this concept of leaning into the feelings. Like, we're going to be disappointed. We're going to have our feelings hurt. We're going to feel awkward. I mean, of course we are. We're human beings. I mean, and that we had a lot of conversations about that of, that sounds like it was a really hard day, and like letting him feel seen, but then like leaning into it with him, getting in next to him, snuggling up into that like hard feeling, but then like having the wherewithal to be able to say, this is going to be temporary, this is going to pass, and this is going to feel better. And to me, that was kind of the we worked on that a lot. We still work on that. I still work on that as a parent. But, I think that's a lot of it is, this is not going to be forever. We're going to figure this out.
Well, beautifully said. I mean, some researchers have said, no mood lasts for more than 4 to 9 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. I mean,
Mhm.
unfortunately, the good ones pass as well, but the other ones do. And so self-regulating ourselves as parents helps us not get so distressed that they end up absorbing ours, and then that's synergistic. They get more and more anxious the more anxious we are. So that's why self-regulation, and we'll probably be talking about this quite a bit, starts with us, and we model it. But there's also this magical thing that can happen with co-regulation, our new favorite term, which means if I'm calm, and continue to be calm while they're up and down with a geyser emotion about the day, at some point they'll absorb that. And if I get more and more anxious, it's called circular anxiety, then he's going to get more and more anxious. So we're making him worse, not better, although we can make him better. It's not linear. It's not like if I'm Zen, he'll get Zen, but he will do better. He'll come to regulate better if I can be calm. And I know that you've pursued mindfulness as something on the side here for your family and for yourself.
That's right.
You want to say a little bit about that?
It's just been such a great tool. I mean, you talk about that co-regulation and that, that ability to kind of lean into how we feel, and not just like, oh yeah, I feel really angry or I feel really sad, but like, where is that in my body? Like just noticing that without judgment, talking about it. That way you can, have this opportunity to respond rather than just react to what's happening. Which, I think the teenage brain wants to react.
Right.
And the mama brain wants to react sometimes too, depending on what's going on. But the ability to kind of work together and practice together, to use our breath, to use whatever nature, bare feet in the grass, whatever feels right in the moment, to drop into the body, feel where the feelings are, identify it, recognize that it moves on, like you talked about, that, that the feelings will change, and then respond appropriately, with intention.
Yeah. Well, I know we only have like 1 minute for your next question, but I think there's a lot of answer in your question. Do you want to ask your next question?
Yeah. So my question was, as a parent, what is the best way to let go of expectations of what we thought parenting would be like? As in, love the journey that we're on, and then secondarily expand my life as a parent for this kind of post-launch phase of my life. So other things besides just, yep, I'm the mom. So cultivating that beyond just that role now. I mean, that's my phase.
Right. Well, one of the interesting things about adolescence is starting around 11, they start wanting to, flee and, have their own lives and pursue autonomy and independence and self-reliance and so forth. And it really is an opportunity, even at early adolescence, to say, hey, I got to get a life. As one of the famous pediatricians, T. Barry Brazelton, said one time, we need to be a person first and a parent second. Which is really hard for a lot of us mother bears, because like you said, a lot of us are only as happy as, it's not great to only be as happy as your least happy kid. It's a struggle, but it is worth doing and what you said is pursuing friendships is so important. When I wrote a book called The Launching Years with Jenny Wyatt years ago, I did a poll, and I found parents of seniors in high school had as one of their biggest regrets that they hadn't prepared more by having friendships. I thought it was going to be things like, oh, I should have been closer to my co-parent, or I should have, pursued my job no, it was about friendships, interestingly. So thank you for, giving that wisdom to people that are listening, to don't postpone joy from other places than just parenthood. It takes effort, but you're being on that path, and even helping to have parent support groups for adolescents. You're on that path already, right? So I think hopefully you'll inspire other listeners that have younger children. So thank you so much for your contribution, Deb. I really appreciate it. Okay, I think we have next one up. It's going to be Nikki Share. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
So, again, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family and then you can tee up your question.
I live in Seattle with my husband and our 3 kids who are aged 4, almost 3, and 6 months. And my question is, how do I deal with temper tantrums when they're happening at bedtime? Generally, we subscribe to like the gentle parenting, um, type of way of dealing with conflict. And I don't want to delay bedtime every night, but I also want to be there for those big feelings.
Right, right. So why don't you tell the listeners what you mean by gentle parenting? Some might not know what that means.
Yeah, so what I mean by that is that generally when any of my kids have tantrums, our approach is to be there for them and hug them and, give them the attention that they need to get through that, and then talk about it after they've calmed down. And that works really great during the daytime, but if it's like 7:30 or 8 at night and we're all just done with the day, it's not as successful.
Right, because then they learn that they protest at night and you'll stay with them longer.
Exactly, yeah.
It's hard to figure out. And when you hear the phrase sleep training, what does that bring to mind for you?
I guess different things because I've used different tactics with all of my kids. One of my kids kind of like we tried a lot of different things and like as a baby and ended up going with Cry It Out because it was the only thing that really worked. One of my kids was just a pretty good sleeper and didn't really need much. And then now we're kind of looking into it all again with our baby. And so not one particular approach.
And do you remember how you felt about the Cry It Out approach?
Desperate.
Desperate. And you're getting that way a little bit now?
Not there right now, no.
Yeah. But you're starting to say, wow, if I do the cuddle every time, why would they ever sleep independently? And also they're not going down and learning that the bed is a safe place because they're there and they cry and then you go to them and they're not learning that it's safe. So you've figured out, now what do I do? But how was that experience? And Cry It Out is such a negative term, but sleep training is kind of a strange term too. I like it in my 4 to 7-year-old book, the last one getting to come, I called it Successful Sleep Programs. I just was thinking, I want to have this sound a little bit better. But it really is about sleeping independently and finding that they wake up in the middle of the night and, I'm not terrified. I'm used to my bed being my bed being here and my parent not being here so that I'm frightened. So you can see that it really is about that. One of the first, along with bowel training, about self-regulation, right? I had this experience just the other day, Nikki, with a parent that had their 2-year-old in the playpen, which is where she takes naps, and mom was in the kitchen making dinner, and she kept thinking, I should go there, she needs me, because it was protesting and crying. She goes, well, maybe she'll self-regulate, maybe she'll, and she creeped over and looked through the doorway and saw that she was just finding the rattle and finding the blanket and finding the toy, and then was perfectly happy with that stuff, and then fell asleep. And she goes, I almost blew it. She self-regulated and it almost interfered with her learning that. And I just love that story. I mean, I literally was practically jumping up and down because that's what we're looking for. And that's a beautiful story. But even the gradual retreat approach to, I'll be back in 5 minutes, I'll be back in 5 minutes. And then 10 minutes, and pretty soon they're finding out, they cry a little bit, but mom's there, she keeps coming back. And then they fall asleep on their own. And I learned I can fall asleep. So you know what the ultimate programming is like. But if you figured it out with Cry It Out, and then the other one just magically did it, maybe this one will too. But you have both of those to help you be confident that this will work out one way or another, and you can do a sleep program. Rather than going into a lot of the programs, because they're all over the web, the Ferber approach, the gradual retreat, there's so many that would take 3 hours. I would rather talk about what it takes for you to do this, and any parent can talk about, first of all, readiness, emotional readiness on your part to just do it if you do a sleep program. Parental unity, because I find sometimes one parent feels one way or another and they need to be together, or when the anxiety goes up, as it always will with the protesting, screaming at night, that will split the parents if they're not like holding on. And I know everything I've done with my husband, I was like, I'm holding on to him and he's holding on to me. And then we can get through almost anything, because we've got that support. And when I have single parents that I take care of, I say, find somebody else, because we need that strength. The other thing is, a prep, that this is the program with a 2-year-old, to involve them and what kind of cuddly do when you want mommy, but mommy's just going to be at the door, to have what I call a cuddle kit, and then to even practice, during the day. Okay, what are you going to do at night? Let's practice. They love games so prep and practice and unity. But the other thing is that I think parents, there's no right way on this. And there's no right way on so many things. And I want to really emphasize today, since I have the helm, there are some cultures that sleep train in early infancy. They just don't come back and the kids figure it out. And the kids come out well adjusted. And there's some that have the family bed until puberty. And that works out as long as parents can have sexual intimacy other times. And luckily, I've been around long enough that I've seen both things work. Early sleep training and behavior management, which makes some people uncomfortable, and family bed for a long time. As long as it's good with everybody and we have balanced, structure and love and authoritative parenting and other parts of life, they can work out. And that's so reassuring. There's no right way. So then, the wise mind concept in some of the psychology approaches that we take these days, dialectical behavior therapy is sort of like, I want structure and I want love. I want gentle parenting approach and I want to help them self-regulate. Both and, right? So that cognitively you've got options. Emotionally, you want to be ready for whatever program you do or whatever approach you take. And then what are your goals? And are you ready to do it with the co-parent and the process? And intuitively, if it doesn't feel right, can it? Anything I say or anybody else says on the web, go for that parental intuition. Nikki, I knew I was going to meet with you today, but just ironically, yesterday I had a mom going through so much with her job. She's moving. She has a 4-year-old that just started major tantrums after being successful at independent sleeping. And I was seeing them more after, and she was filled with guilt. 2 hours of, I know he saw me exasperated and negative and rejecting. And I said, oh yeah, those times happen. Like, come on, forgive yourself. But also that I said, well, what do you think you should? Oh, and they're about to move and change schools. So I said, I was really trying not to tip the scale because I knew, she should make the decision. I said, well, what feels right to you? And she goes, bag it, get him back in bed. I go, yeah, good, go for it. I think she was expecting me, oh yeah, let's get on to the goals, but I knew as a mom, even though she had sleep deprivation, the next day that she, with all the moves and all the change, they were going to do family bed for a little bit. And when they moved, they'd get back to it, which we can always do, right? With sleep. So, that's why I like for people to be ready early. Early on, say, am I ready for this? So that it's not back and forth, because that's what's really confusing. And it just makes it harder. So if people aren't ready. The other thing about people that do this sleep training earlier is there's illness, there's moves, there's all sort of, so most of us go in and out of successful sleep training anyway. And to know that helps us go, okay, we're going to have another couple of challenging weeks. We'll do that when it feels right to us. So your question helps everybody feel better that is approaching this with whatever age they have, because I've gone all the way to 6 and 9 and a lot of kids with, have sleep problems. And when they feel their parents' exasperation and upset, it's like there's something wrong with them. There's something wrong with me as a parent, or there's something wrong with them. And it's like, ooh, that negative juju is not going to have it go well. If you say, this is normal, when am I going to take this on? Am I ready for this one? Right? It makes it just much easier on you emotionally. So is some of that relatable of what I just said?
Yeah, very relatable. I mean, I love that there's no one right approach and that any of these ways can be successful, and that likely the most successful way will be to do what feels best to my husband and I. And yeah, I love that.
Yeah, there's definitely no right way. And there are all these trends, like I'm into, the Kasdan method, which is a lot of great information in his book about behavior management, or I'm a gentle parent, or I'm an attachment parent, or there's all these labels. Even I get confused. But the best positive parenting approaches always include both love and support, and structure, and structure, and limits, and programming, and hopefully collaborating with the child. So we'll just go, I want to support my child, and I want to challenge my child to self-regulate and learn new things. So it's not just love, 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 even though that's the most important. If you had a balance beam, there'd be weighted towards secure attachment and unconditional love, but we're always wanting to challenge them, and trust that they can self-regulate, right? We only want to be the good enough parent, which means I won't be there all the time for their needs, whether it's I can come to the door, but I got to get my own sleep and do the sleep program or whatever. But also, you have other children, you'll leave them at school. We're going to disappoint them regularly with not making life just pure bliss. But out of that, they learn to be competent themselves. So that's the good news. Only have to be good enough. And some of this frustration that they have learning how to self-regulate or be okay in bed is good for them. So you're there just doing the little balance beam, with gentle parenting and wanting him challenged to learn. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
thank you, Nikki. It's going to be really beneficial to a lot of listeners. I can tell, and there have already been questions about that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Jessica. How are you?
Hi.
Okay, so you want to tell us a little bit about your situation and question?
Sure. Well, my name's Jessica Michaels. I am a parent to a creative and energetic 3-year-old. My husband and I kind of joined the parent club a little bit later in life, in our 40s, in the midst of a pandemic. But the thing that we're kind of facing right now is we send our son to preschool at our local synagogue, and the climate of safety has obviously kind of shifted since October 7th. And now when he arrives at school every day, there's a security guard that greets him. So I guess my question is, how do I address this?
Well, in a way, you've asked me the easiest question you could ever ask me, even though it has to do with one of the biggest, most serious issues, and that is with a toddler, did you say 3-year-old? So from a developmental point of view, they're very concrete. So even if it's a he or she, he or they, even if he said, oh, why the officer, they're concrete. You say, oh, they're there to keep you safe. That's all. Because that's all they need to know. I'm there at home to keep you safe, and he is at your school. And where else do we see officers? Oh, by the side of the road. Yeah. And sometimes at a concert or at a store. Yep, they're there to make sure people follow the rules, right? So it's really easy to not, and important not to, I call it over talk. Developmentally, he just needs to know that he's safe. Now, the other interesting thing is, how did you feel when you saw that officer?
Honestly, it was a conversation that a lot of the parents were having, and I work at the Holocaust Center, so I'm pretty aware of security issues anyways. I and my husband also, we didn't feel like it was really necessary at the time. There's pretty good security anyways. But then, they decided to bring this security on. And I remember one day the security guard wasn't there. He was probably, they make the rounds and he probably just was on the other side of the building, but suddenly like I got really nervous. And also I really wanted just to make sure that the security guard knew my son. And I didn't really expect those feelings myself because I kind of was like, we don't need this.
Right, right. Well, it's interesting too, because of working where you do, because a lot of times when you work in a certain space, like the Holocaust Museum, you're thinking about safety. And, we know that the Holocaust memories and trauma are heritable. And if you think about that, even in the climate space, now we have eco-anxiety, and I noticed that there are a lot more workshops for people working on climate all day because they think about disasters and the end of nature as we know it, and they need, so whatever space you're working in, it's interesting to say, is this a source of anxiety for me? And will this throw off my parenting in any way? So I was thinking somebody might say, well, if I'm having anxiety, but my 3-year-old might, whether I say that officer is just there for security or not. And I think it's really important to own our feelings, to say, yeah, again, always for the 3-year-old brain, you want to tell the truth and say, yeah, I have some feelings, because, we all have feelings when we have fears. I have fears about, you could say, safety and people that maybe aren't following the rules. And what is your, you can lead it into their level of fears, but own our own at their level. But this is why, with wars going on and disasters all over the place, we really recommend that people not have TVs on or talk about burglaries in the neighborhood around children. They just don't need it at 3 years old. They got enough. They got to think about, how to put on their shoes and separating from mommy at school in the morning. They don't need more big people worries. Now, let's just stretch this out for you and for everybody else listening. Jessica, when you think about having a 5, 8, or 11-year-old, there'll be all different levels, and different temperament kids require different kind of attuned approaches to what we teach about racism or bigotry or discrimination. But if you think about what you want to transmit to your young child, what values do you want, whether it's about a Jewish day school or, a mosque or, Black Lives Matter protest, what kinds of things do you want to convey to your child?
That's a good question. I think open-mindedness, kindness, just being aware too, of himself, but also other people's feelings and how his treatment impacts others.
So that's beautiful, Jessica, because you weren't just talking about your own child. You were talking about, I want my child to be cared for by the community, and I want my child to care for the community and other people's needs. So respect for differences, humanity, civility. And so one of the things we talk about, whether it's racism, race ed, or political difference ed, or sex ed, is there are opportunities to share our values, and and we want to look for natural opportunities. So other parents listening right now might say, yeah, well, it's easy with a toddler, but what about my 15-year-old who went, and there are these protests and they're offensive? And there are always opportunities to articulate our own values, like you said, about bigotry or about caring for others, respect for others, and wanting everybody to be safe and secure. I want everybody to feel like when they go to their school or they amble about the community that they can be, safe and secure. So sometimes we just go to my danger, my kid, and we go, well, everybody does well together when everyone does well together. Inclusiveness is also sort of unity, not just us and them. And we've got so much us and them that one of the wonderful things about the under 10-year-olds, I'll talk about the other ones later, is that they really do listen to us. It's our time to really transmit a lot of our values in these natural opportunity ways. So some of what's going on right now allows for that, fortunately and unfortunately. So you had another question, I think.
I did. So I mentioned that I had my son a little bit older in life, so we're not planning on other children. So I'm interested in sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm interested in just some advice about overcoming some of the unique challenges that come with having an only child. I think there's some pros and cons.
What are you most concerned about?
I guess he doesn't have a built-in playmate, and so often it's us. And so just over dependence on us. I think there's also sometimes, and I hate to fall on stereotypes because I work in a place where we try to avoid that. But there's often, stereotypes about only children who are a little bit spoiled, or so just those types of things. But I think mostly it's just his over dependence on us because he doesn't have a built-in playmate at home.
Yeah, and that's going to change so fast, going to preschool and then elementary school is going to be the opposite very soon. Play dates and after school activities, he's always with people and now he's stressed out. So I think that'll change quite a bit, but you're right. I mean, things have changed so much. After World War II, there was so many babies born to compensate for what we'd just been gone through. And then it's changed radically to the 1, 2, or 3, right? Since then. And there has been, and of course, with moving with the, what happened again after the 50s, people were moving for their work and so forth. They went away from their extended families. Not good, because again, there weren't people around, aunts and uncles over there and cousins over there. So even if you did have one child, you were really raising them among 15 in the little family enclave, like my grandfather's farm. And I got farms with all that going on. And I'm so romanticized about it because it all represented support and sort of a dispersion of this sort of only child thing. Now, interestingly, Jessica, I had on my bookshelf, I have on my bookshelf a really old book. You don't want to go look it up. It's dated, but I want you to get an idea for how it was probably 40 years ago that people started looking at this only child thing, or precious, it was called too precious child syndrome. And I would say anything that makes us feel that we have a kind of a vulnerable child, or a too precious child, too much focus on my child, like, oh, he has diabetes, or, oh, he has, a disability of some sort, so I need to focus on him more and make up for that disability. There is a risk for what we call in psychology now fragilizing. Not a good word, right? It means with that special, or that focus. It's a little bit hothousing the child when we need to developmentally, remember I keep saying, we want to support and challenge. And so if there's too much of that focus that sometimes people worry about with one child in the home, it's all about me. My needs will be met very quickly because there's only one of me and two of you. So I do understand that concern. And so, almost thinking about that, you will probably, because you're already aware, I don't want to meet every one of his needs instantaneously because there's only one. And we waited a little later in life. So, I thought more and he's even more special. So you're already on your way because you're showing so much self-awareness about it. So I would commend you on that. And I feel like, you know, developmentally, you want to leave more space for those challenges, you know, and not meeting his needs every minute. And that'll be the way you compensate. You know, any looking up the literature on single children or parents of 6 children, I call that linear, like having one child. What does that cost? Nothing necessarily, because there are too many other things in the mix. And then with your awareness that you don't want to fragilize or don't want to hothouse because of that microscope he's under or meet his needs too quickly, I feel like, okay, you've already kind of probably taken yourself out of the risk group. So thank you, because it allows me to talk about anybody listening thinking, is my child vulnerable in some way? Do I need to worry about him, or do I need to focus on more? Because really, it's a balance. So thanks so much for that question. And I'm going to move on to the next one. Bye-bye, Jessica. Thank you. Hi, Will.
Hey there.
So, do you want to tell us about your situation, your family, and your question?
Yes, great to be here. My wife and son and I live in the Seattle area. My son is 22, and I'm a photographer. And anyway, yeah, we've been through quite a lot. And I guess my question is, looking back over the years, I just wonder about, how I could have maybe parented the kid I had instead of the kid I thought I had or the kid I expected to have. That's one thing I think about sometimes, and also how it relates to schooling and choosing a school and that type of thing.
Well, tell us about your experience. What kind of school experience did your son have?
We were in the Seattle Public Schools when he was young, and in the 4th grade we moved to Bellevue, and the area we're in Bellevue is very sought after because of the good reputation of the schools, and I would say things were really pretty good. Grade school, middle school, and then when he went to high school, that's where I think the school might not have been a very good fit for him. He wanted to go because they had a good music program. He loved playing music. And so that was kind of the clincher, but I should have listened to my wife. My wife was talking about maybe having him go to more of a less academic school, a school more for like creative type kids. And there were options. There were a few options. And we just kind of took the easy option. And he, like I said, he wanted to go also to this school, but it was a very academic, almost like a college prep school, and it was not a good fit, and it was very difficult in many ways.
You know, Will, when you think about not listening to your wife, when you think about being biased toward the competitive academic, was there any, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you, anything in your past or in your own childhood or upbringing that made you kind of go, I want to go the competitive route, or want to give him that challenge?
No, there wasn't. In my family, there was no emphasis on education. We went to school, everything, and I decided to go to college. My family, that wasn't how I grew up. My wife grew up that way though. But my wife and I both were kind of real academic achievers, and school was easy for me. School was my best subject. Anyway, so it was kind of, I guess I kind of unconsciously expected him to get in the groove at school,
Yeah. Well, you sort of answered the question, because if you thought, oh, I can go do school and my wife knows how to do it, so this should work out. And then there was something in your wife that had a little feeling, intuition of like, I don't know, this could be a grind, I'm not sure. And if you were just predisposed to think this should work, like you
Yeah.
said, parent the child you have rather than one you think you have or wanted or think might be just like you. Parents do that all the time, right? Well, this
Yeah.
worked for me. And yet they're their own little being,
Yeah, I often, it's hard to see something from a different perspective, but yeah, I would say, and we didn't pressure him academically or anything. We didn't, we encouraged the creative side. And anyway, and part of our story is we finally got had some academic testing done on him, like really late, like way too late, like senior year of high school, maybe, I think, junior or senior, and learned a lot. And one of the things we learned was he's brilliant. He tested on the memory part like higher than anyone had ever tested for this particular psychologist. Anyway, I could tell you more, but there was one area that was not the same. And anyway, if we would have known, and he would have known that earlier, maybe he could have gotten an IEP or whatever. There could have been accommodations made or whatever. But his experience at the high school he went to was so bad from an academic standpoint and a bullying standpoint. And the school, the bullying was academic bullying, not you're a jock or whatever, you're a nerd. The nerds kind of bullied the kids who weren't straight A students.
So the norm was to be really driven, and if you weren't, you were less than.
Right. And he was the kind of kid who would never throw another kid under the bus. So if he got bullied, he would take the fall for it. Or if there's something bad happened, he would take the fall for it. Or if he got bullied, he would never name names. But I saw what happened, He would show me sometimes. It was really, really bad. And then the thing is,
sorry, well, when I want to make sure we're all understanding. So when you say bullied, he was made fun of for not being academically oriented? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I won't repeat
In
what I
the
said, but
AP classes and all that?
yeah, if you weren't in AP classes, or if you didn't have pretty much straight A's, or you weren't going to trying to get into an Ivy League school, you were kind of, it was not good at this situation. So it was a really bad experience. So he didn't even finish at the school, and I don't blame him. But he got out and finished the schooling online through the district or whatever. And honestly, the ironic thing was the last year he got some teachers that were just so wonderful and so supportive, and it was just like too little too late, kind of, He finally got some teachers who would really work with him, and but it was a bummer.
Right. Well, this is incredibly valuable to the listeners because they're all being encouraged as we speak to think about the child they have, not the one they thought would be a mini-me, or not the one they thought they'd have if they just gave enough resources to it. There'd be a soccer star, or there'd be an athletic person. And, we might be a bookish person and have a super athlete. We might be athletic and get a bookish. And we're always saying, this is a unique being. How do I help them flourish? And you mentioned that your son was musically quite capable, and that is, a wonderful gift on its own. I mean, I really feel like, I know it sounds hokey. Every child is gifted. They're gifted at being who they are. And it's our job to find the gifts and help them flourish. They need some basics, and we leverage their gifts as we sort of nudge the things that they need to have supported for achievement of the basics. But it sounds like he didn't get that kind of special status as a musical.
He did for a while, but honestly, they had some cuts, and they cut the marching band at like halfway through his tenure there. It was really fun to be in the marching band. They cut the competitive marching band. He ended up joining drum corps. He was the youngest person in drum corps at the age of 14 that year, and traveled the country in the summer. And that's an elite level. Like, he was with college kids playing. And so he really had a lot of achievements in that area, but not the school out part of it ended. Anyway, it was really a bummer. And that was like, I remember,
incredible bummer.
I remember when we were in the Seattle Public Schools, he was little, like first grade or something, second grade, first grade, I think. And he was crying on the floor in the kitchen on the way to school one morning. And what's wrong, you know? And he had just found out that they had cut the art program at his school, and because of budget cuts, or maybe the teacher could only teach so many kids or classes or whatever, and he wasn't going to have art that quarter. And so he was crying on the floor, and he's like, "But Daddy, it's the only reason I want to go to school is to take Mr. Jones' art class," you know?
Says everything.
And I
Yeah.
was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Well, we bought him art classes. We took him to art classes
Yeah.
after school, and we did that. So we made up for it. But anyway.
Right. And that's really, you know, Will, you're bringing up so many points, but I want to say for many people that are thinking about lost opportunities and so forth with COVID, that there was a moment during COVID when I was taking care of this, I think she was sophomore in high school, and COVID, everything was offline. And her mental health was really compromised. She had depression, anxiety. She was in self-injury. She was really in trouble. And she kept in contact with her. In her case, it was, what do they call it? Cheer, which is sort of like dancing. And I mean, it's a big deal in some of these suburban high schools. And her dance instructor kept in touch with her. And I thought, you know what? I think the therapy she's getting with working out online with her dance group, because school was such in the toilet as well, she was flunking, and the contact with her peers that were her surround group, and the contact with that teacher and that program really did more for her mental health than what I could do. I know that might sound overly humble, but I kept thinking, this is her lifeline. It is bringing her more positive emotions than I can do with cognitive therapy charts. You know, I just kept thinking, what can I do for her in the environment so she can feel better because she's in such a closed circumstance. So and then last year, as you know, they cut more programs in Seattle area, and I was crying in the car when I listened to NPR and slash all these programs, because just for the rest of you, we have a lower enrollment, we have a lot of absenteeism like the rest of you, and so we have cut costs for school, and they're eliminating these programs more. Well, so back to your point, you have a child that would have benefited from a more full range, full opportunity high school experience where they're thinking about the entire group and all of its diverse needs. There's an old book you might have read it at some point, it's called Frames of Intelligence by Howard Gardner. It was a big one several decades ago. He said, you know, there are many kinds of intelligence. There's the math one and the writing one. We know about those. But there's kinesthetic, there's music, there's naturalistic, you know, people like Lewis and Clark, you know, that like a lot of ADHD kids, you take them out in nature and they hear everything, they see everything, they're on 10 radio weight. And I'm like linear, you know, I'm like one that goes to school like a farmer and just goes one way. And then we've got these other kids that are so open and different in their sensibility and their gifts. And the problem with group education is group education. They're trying to meet the needs. And then to your point, in these highly competitive high school environments, sometimes they really cater to the loud minority, the parents that want more APs, more honors, and say, well, this is what you've got to do because you know you need to help us get in these competitive schools, and they're looking for these APs. Yeah, but what about the rest of them, right?
I think that opportunity is great for the kids who need it or want it, but why does everybody have to feel like they have to do it?
And why do these have the power, right?
Right. Well, like for instance, when he was in the Seattle Public Schools, there was tutoring available if he struggled with math a little bit sometimes, and there was support. And when we were here in Bellevue, in the Bellevue School District in high school, there was no tutoring, there's no support for him.
Right.
If he fell behind or if he had struggled with some of his math, and it was really weird. So of course we hired expensive tutors to come to the house and tutor him, and I guess a lot of people do that. But it was weird to me that supposedly these academics are important at the school and they don't support the kids in it. You know, it was just, and they had a lot of money. You know,
right. Well, I heard once Michael Thompson wrote some really good books about education, and he has said, my take after all these years is that the school is like this. 1/3 of the kids really have their needs met by what school brings to them generically. 1/3 just thrive, flourish, do great. 1/3, they do fine. And as we know, many of those C students thrive later, so they're doing okay. But 1/3, it's really missing about 1/3. The differently abled, differently wired, the differently gifted. And, that would be our goal, is to make it, an equal opportunity delivery service. And yet the loud minority can really push for those competitive. And then because we got to tie this up, well, I think parents are learning a lot from what you said. I want to pull out a couple of things. One, listen to your intuition. You're looking at their signature strengths and how do we promote those for their sense of self-worth and sense of specialness, while we, of course, want them to get the basics. The other thing that you're really showing is parents make up for what the systems don't provide, right? So you got math tutoring over here, and you promoted the art over there when you saw that it wasn't happening for them. So, for all the parents that have shortcomings in the system or what's happening to their child, they're trying to make it up for them. My daughter was friendless for about 3 years in elementary school, and I just took her to Coyote Junior High because it has all those art classes, hoping that she wasn't noticing that she didn't have a play date for 3 years. I felt terrible for her, but I just tried to make up for it with a couple of neighbors that didn't know her low rank at school, that she was supposed to be the big loser there. Took her to the neighbor, family, friends, and I took her to art classes so that we could get through these 3 years. And I think that's what all parents do when they're hitting those lapses. And I hope you've inspired the parent listeners to really do that for their own children, because probably even most of them will have those moments where I better get in there as an advocate and make up for the shortcomings of my experience right now with schools. So thank you.
I think that's really true. And I just want to say a couple of things really quick. I noticed that if I picked up my son at school, the last thing I should do is ask him how his day went at school. And boys, everyone's different, but I think with boys. And so I think the best thing I could ever do when I was with my son is to not say anything in the car at all. Maybe have the music on low and wait for him to say something,
Right.
And then that was the entree to a conversation, and maybe he would tell me something. But if I asked him, hey, how did school go today or whatever, he would say, oh, don't ask about school. I just got done with school. Like, I don't want, And so that's one little tip. That's probably in one of your books.
Well, that's a really good sometimes we say, how are those mean girls? And it's like we're dumpster diving. It's like, let's go for the dirt and help them ruminate about the worst part of their life, So yeah, no, it's all about attunement, right? Some are wanting to express and wanting, that little prompt. And there are a lot of focus groups that I've done with kids, where the kids say exactly that. The words that they hate the most at the dinner table is, how was school today? Now the parents mean it innocently, like, let's open it up. I want to have an exchange. But it's kind of lazy in a way to say, you could say, like, how was that Spanish test that you worried about? That's attuned because they already said they were worried about it. But, given the way that the biggest stressor reported by children is academic pressure. And so if we are experienced, doesn't matter what we intend, as more pressure by focusing on it, then, we're stressing them more. Instead of saying, what was highlighted today? Or like, what was your favorite song that
I was an academic all-star. I got better grades in college by far. I was on the dean's list, all that stuff. I was like honored through my life in my academics, and it's never amounted to anything for me. I've never been asked what my grade point average is.
Yeah,
I've been asked when I apply for a job or whatever. I've had a successful life, and the success has not come from the academics, honestly. So parents, please listen to me. Your kid is a whole being,
Yes, thank you.
Honor all parts of your kid. And they'll flourish.
Yes, from that, right?
Yeah,
From focusing on their strengths. Okay, well, thank you so much, Will.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. And I want to thank all of our panelists, all of our parents, Will, Austin, and thank you, Nikki, Cher, and thank you, Deb Grover, and thank you to Jessica Michael. So they're very generous sharing their time. And I'm going to shift to Q&A with all of you. A lot of questions have been coming in. And first, I want to take a moment for Brenna to put up our poll. And please let us know where you're joining us. Excuse me, this is the one where it's like, tell us the publication that you registered through. Yeah. Good. We've got Chicago. We've got New York. Thank you so much. So you can keep putting that in there as I shift to the next part. Got to get out of that poll. Okay, thanks. Okay. So the first question I'm going to queue up here. Okay. We're going to shift to adolescence, go back to little ones after that. Everyone talks about how important it is to have a good relationship with your teenager. And yet, how are we supposed to do this when they're mostly rude, if not disrespectful and disdainful, and absolutely not interested in spending time with us? So helpful. And there was another generic one that just said, oh, could you just talk about teenagers? So first, let me start by saying that whenever I do big talks in high schools or middle schools, I'll talk about, like what pushes your buttons the most, and the number one answer I get is rudeness and disrespect. And there's almost this sort of indignation. How dare they treat us this way with all that we're doing for them? So I want to talk about this question, why are they so rude? From a sort of a zoom out perspective. I mentioned that, about 50, 70 years ago, we shifted from authoritarian parenting to what we ideally call authoritative, which includes three legs to a very steady stool. One is secure attachment, love, acceptance, accepting them exactly the way they are. A second one is authority and structure and limits and boundaries. And a third one is respect for their thoughts and feelings, their personal autonomous brain and sensibilities. And those are the three stools. Now, in the oldies, it was just authority. It was just command control. I give the orders, you go do it. I want obedience. I want propriety. I want you to do what you want. And feelings didn't really come into it if you were to poll parents, 100 years ago. But we really care about their feelings, their mental health, their internal world, their sense of self-worth now, starting in like the 70s and 80s and onward. And with that, we don't operate from a fear-based parenting approach anymore, that they might get whooped. We might have corporal punishment or love withdrawal as a way to make sure they follow the rules. And what got traded in there with their are becoming approachable and trusted and caring about their feelings is they're not as scared of us. And we want it that way. But one of the things that happens is that when they are stressed out at the end of the day, and we say time to do your chores or put your day pack in your room or any of those things, it is so irritating and it is just so burdensome, right? They've used up all their willpower, if you will, or self-control during the day. If you just think about what they go through all day long, rules, how would you like to go to one meeting and then go to another meeting with other people and then follow the rules and not get to go outside or do other things? One meeting, and then you're wondering about your zits and you're wondering about that girl who likes her, not me, and you're thinking about what a fool you made of yourself on the basketball court. Constant threats to your well-being, but also your sense of self and your sense of how you're perceived by your peers, and all these expectations in the class. They are exhausted when they get home. You are the secure base who will love them no matter what, and you're irritating because you've got rules and routines that you got to follow through with. They're rude. Now, I believe that we should have respect, name calling, cursing, and things like that. But sometimes if they go, oh, Mom, you're such a nag, or, oh, you're so strict, or why do you always want me to do your agenda, not mine? You know, if that's rude, because it's complaining, it's not really appreciative, I think it's kind of understandable. And if we're going to hit the goal of mostly positive parenting, you know, we know from so much research, if it's a pie chart, we want to be mostly positive, follow through on routines, another 45% of that, give consequences when necessary, very few punishments. Punishments aren't, imposing penalties are, very occasional. Following through on routines is important, but most of the time we want to be positive, take the high road, ignore some of the riffraff. And this is really hard on a lot of parents because they're thinking, I treat you well, so you need to treat me well. But it's not an even playing field. And with their developing brains, their behaviors are often governed by emotions rather than their reasonable brains, especially when they're highly aroused, excited, or really bummed out. And so we're going to really see the riffraff of the day, and they're going to find our rules and expectations annoying. So unfortunately, the outcome is overdetermined to be rudeness and sometimes disrespect. And you'll have to use that little balance beam we talked about earlier of I want mostly love, but I want to challenge them to up their game, but I want to be mostly positive in, day after day. So if there's just a little too much stress going on in other ways, you probably want to postpone, I need respectful treatment, if it's just a certain amount of attitude. So that's a long answer to a big question. And in terms of the not being interested in spending time, that's really about their sense of autonomy. They are supposed to, in the second decade, move into peer orientation, the second tribe. Their main secure base is with you. They use their secure base from which to individuate, become that unique self that Will talked about. We let them go out, forage, we help them when we need to, and they are going to, of course, be influenced by their peers, mostly in terms of, tastes and of music and how they dress and how they talk and so forth. But they're still based, mainly in your family and home values, even though they're going to be trying on new values, with education, sexuality, substance use questions, and so forth. But there's usually an arc where they come back to an integrated combination of our values. Long story of what adolescent development is, but that second decade, thanks to Deb earlier, we know that it's a time for us, as the teenagers used to say, get a life, that we get another life and develop that while we're sort of chopped liver to them. I love that phrase. What am I, chopped liver? Yeah, sort of, otherwise known as a secure base. So I can worry about how teachers feel about me, how coaches feel about me, how my peers feel about me. And so it looks like they don't respect how we see them or how they treat us, but really it's just tucked away to come out again, usually by the end of high school, more appreciation for what we're doing for them. But it's not an even playing field. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is a good one. What is your advice on how to redirect 2-year-olds when they have meltdowns in public areas? Okay, now I saw 3 other questions about 7 and 8-year-olds in meltdowns too, and teenagers have meltdowns. So let's talk about meltdowns. And as you know, one of the links that was with this event was an article I wrote for Parent Map on the parent superpower of our self-regulation. So that'll be tucked in here as well. Now, before I get into meltdowns per se and how to handle them, I want to say a few things. First, let's talk about meltdowns on a continuum, because sometimes they're upset and they're distressed, but they're not like screaming and crying and hysterical. If we go with the 2-year-old, I call it the windmill. There's the one where they're on their shoulder and just like, scooting around in circles and screaming. That would be 7 and up, 7.5 and up. If there's a curve, we're both kind of in the middle, distressed at most of the day. And then we move into the high stress. 7.5 and up is they are having an emotional seizure. Okay, that's really important because a lot of the websites you go to, how to handle a meltdown, they'll launch right off and say, validate their feelings or name it to tame it. Well, when they're in the windmill or if they're just screaming hysterically, number one, they can't hear you very well. And two, they can't use their words because their brain is offline, right? So is ours. When the amygdala, the reptilian brain, the fight or flight brain is triggered, right? We call it an amygdala hijack because the emotional centers hijack all the neural circuits in the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, and all they're doing is threat, threat, threat. So part of it is how do we stand by and not stimulate them further? If you talk at them too much, even if it's the website saying, validate their feelings, talk to them, have them name their feelings, they can't do that. And here's the next point. When you're talking at a child who's hysterical in a meltdown, it's stimulating. And if we're frustrated and not self-regulated, which we probably won't be, are at our very best because we're exasperated and we want to get to the next place, or we're embarrassed by at the public, setting context, or we're with our family or in front of the school, we're humiliated. So when we say, name your feeling, get on with it, there's usually this change agenda and they get worse. So our tone, our words that they can't cognate or process, and then our change agenda and our exasperation, that's why number one is self-regulate, because we may not be able to make it better when they're really flooding, but we may make it worse. We can help it go better, and with that co-regulation term I talked about, if we first get to calm. And the reason why I wanted the title of our book, Three Backwards, for the last three books as a series, is we will not be calm if our child is having a meltdown in a public place. We will be heightened because emotions are contagious. So our units of distress will go up because we love them. They're a mess, a hot mess. And we might have another agenda to get to someplace, and we're going to go, oh no, not this time. I know what I thought when that happened. I would go, oh no, not again. And they feel that. And then if we're talking at them, there might be this sense of coercion. So I would say, first and foremost, regulate yourself. Deep breathing, singing a song in your mind. Maybe you have a prayer or a chant. Anything other than making it worse, which is kind of going at them too soon if they're truly flooding. Now, I sometimes talk about a cooing and when we say, oh, this is so hard, or oh, this is so hard, you're so upset right now, it's one of those days. So a little of that, which is just acknowledging they're going through something with a really soft word, but there's no agenda to change them. There's just cooing, a really soft, really quiet. So they just know that you're not mad at them. Because they might not know that you've moved out of that exasperation mode and you're into the I'm accepting. And that will help them calm down. What goes up always comes down with anxiety and distress if we don't make it worse. It's the natural course. So that will come, as Deb said earlier, it will have a endpoint. And that's when, okay, now we've gotten into the other techniques. And somebody, whoever asked this question wanted about redirect. Now, once we regulate ourselves and we can see that they're not flooding, they're starting to pant, but they're coming online again, they can talk, definitely having them name their feelings. Are they sad? Are they mad? Are they afraid? Are they having scary thoughts? The name it to tame it is great advice, because when they start to form sentences or name feelings, they are, or we are using our frontal lobe. That's identifying the feeling, forming sentences happens in the frontal lobe. We're moving out of that emotional flood zone. Excellent. Okay, so I have a acronym because I think in emergency situations, officers and firefighters have protocols. CALM. First, we cool down. We take our own temperature and we self-regulate. Then we assess. A for assess. What are my options? I'm going to distract them. I'm going to talk about name 3 things. I'm going to say, ooh, I have my Hermione bot. Remember Harry Potter? I love Hermione where she had that bag. Most of us have day packs or something, bags when we're with a 2-year-old. Oh, it's great to be prepared. Meltdowns could happen anytime. Oh, look at this little thing I brought from home. And would this help? You want some crayons? I have a little pad. You might have some things in your pad for them to, sort of self-calm by drawing their feeling or something, or holding a cuddly. So distract, redirect, cuddle kit that you brought, right? Assess your options, figure out with them what might work. L for listen with empathy. Oh, this is hard. Yes, it's a hard day. They might say, I hate school. I hate the teachers. They hate me. Remember, don't argue about feelings. You'll go, oh, this is one of those days. You don't want to say, no, the teachers. Too much reassurance and is really arguing about their extreme feelings. Or they might say, you lied. And you said, no, I told you we were going to leave the jungle gym after 5 minutes. And I told you that we had to leave at this time. Don't argue about the truth when they're yelling still with that little sputter at the end of the geyser. Just say, oh, this is hard. It's fun. It was so much fun there. Or school is hard sometimes. Just validating their feelings is always, a good one. It doesn't mean we approve or we agree. It just means we get it. They're having a hard time with this transition. And then, of course, M is make a plan. Okay, we need to get to the car. Giving them choices again. You want to carry my purse? You want to take my keys? Do you want to listen to a song? My favorite song on my playlist. You'll make a plan for transition so they can move to the next agenda. It's really important, public place or with family, not to be worried about everybody's giving you the look. I got the look. Everybody gets the look when their kids have meltdowns. It's really embarrassing. We go, oh no, what are they thinking of me? But it's like nothing's more important than your child and getting to calm and delivering that empathic parenting at that point. Because meltdowns will happen even with the best of preparation. Long answer, because I answered about 7 questions that came in from parents about meltdowns. I think what I'd want to say about teenagers is they're just fiercer and more personal. And we really, if there's one thing about adolescent development, we want to not take that normal stuff that we get back from our teenagers personally. It's about development more than it's about them, or it's even about us. And so, hopefully we can take that into account. It's not about me, it's about development. I always say it's so ironic that if you said, do you want to prevent the developmental task of the 2-year-old and 3-year-old to walk and talk? Let's just take walk and talk, the 1 and 2-year-old. Would you ever want them wrapped up so they can't do walking and talking? No, they'll become developmentally delayed. Well, it's the same thing with teenagers. Do you really want to have them go to cold storage and not go through that, the 7-year stretch of middle school and high school and not go through all that mess to get to the other side of a secure identity and knowing their feelings, regulating their feelings and learning about difficult situations? No. But we act like they do. We kind of go read about adolescence, say, okay, and I skip it as if it's the terrible teens. I call them the terrific teens because they're learning so much. They're amazing, but they do kick off a lot of guff at home, and it's super, super hard. So that's why I love to do education, because when we're little anthropologists and we expect those kind of habits, then we don't take it as personally. That's my hope. Okay, now the next one. I'm worried about, this is a good one. I'm worried about how much stress are in kids today, and I also want my child to be resilient. How do you help kids develop resilience? This looks like a basic question, but one of the things we psychologists are talking about lately is we got to educate people about stress, because a little stress is good. A chunk of stress is good. In fact, stress is physiological arousal, right? It happens when, there's going to be a test, or you're about to go to the basketball court. You're on, or we're all, going to plan something, and we want you to be in our group in the history class. All of that is stressful. but it's an opportunity to learn. So forgive me. I love my slides. Okay, I'll have Brenna send it to you. You won't be able to read this, but I just want you to see the normal curve, okay? When you're bored or sleeping, you're here. This is heart rate. When somebody says it's time to go, you have the release, even if there's going to be a test, you have the release of epinephrine, you have the release of adrenaline, cortisol. Yes, it's stressful. Stress hormones, as if it's bad. Stress hormones mean we get activated. And you will see, if you want to go to the link, we have, we get more focused, you get more decisive, you get more alert. And then up here we have optimal performance. So stress is good. We learn, we have all that adrenaline, we focus and we learn. Then when you get stressed out, it means the challenge of the situation, right, exceeds the demands of the situation, exceeds your ability to rise to the occasion. So we don't like the stress out end. Nobody likes this. This is like that 2-year-old or the meltdown one is way over here. So this is why we talk about, we want stress management. We want to learn about mindful calming so we can learn to take what is really this is the parasympathetic system. Okay, charge, right? Focus. And this is on this end, it's like, I need to calm. I'm stressed out. I want to be able to study for my SAT. I want to talk in front of the class. I want to go deal with that situation with my peers where I gossiped and I'm in trouble because I posted that. There are all these really stressful things that happen, and we want to be able to calm ourselves and get back to optimal performance. But this amount of stress is good. So that's why I said earlier, we want a balance of love, whatever you call it, secure attachment, gentle parenting, mindful parenting, loving, acceptance. We want all that. And we want challenge. We want stress. That's how they learn. That's how they learn to self-regulate. So it's just that the magic is in the balance, of course. So that's my promotion and my explainer on mental health and stress, because this is where, over here is where we have mental health problems, and we want to build some of the skills we talked about earlier so they can move back to handling the stress of life. Okay, next one. Do you have resources or organizations to recommend for helping parents navigate support for teens with social challenges involving tech, cell phones, chats, social? Yes. Okay, I'm giving those to Brenna, and you'll have them in the links associated with the event. So real good go-tos are commonsensemedia.com. Common Sense Media, American Academy of Pediatrics has so many resources for this. My friend Delaney Rustin, who wrote and did the Screenagers movie, has wonderful resources. NIH does as well, so we'll have those posted. Can you give me some help in learning motivation techniques for children to read? Okay, this is interesting. I don't know if there's a reading problem. I don't know the age or the context, but let's just assume it's the parent of a 3, 4, 5-year-old who wants to have her child become reading ready, that there's no problem. Or maybe there's not a kid that likes books because he's really kinesthetic. The most important thing a parent can do is model reading, enjoy reading with the child, and not be too pushy. Because what you do if we're too pushy, or we're doing teaching opportunities with phonetics and everything, is that we make it not fun. And literature is one of the best things on the planet, right? Arts are one of the best things on the planet. And reading is a discovery of everything else on the planet. You get into people's minds, and you think about animals, and you think about all sorts of these experiences. But if it's not fun, why would they want to sit down and read with us? So I guess what I'd say for the motivation is don't kill it. Make it fun. Make sure it's teed up in the right, happy zone for them. So that means if they like animals, do animals. If they like anime-ish stuff or cartoons of a certain spiritual sort, you'll do that. International books. The best thing you can do is go to the library. That's what those librarians are there for, my husband went every Wednesday. He missed a Wednesday for a couple times in like over 7 years, and the librarian called me up to see if my husband was okay. One of the most fun experiences, because we were so, it's free. I mean, our tax dollars, and hopefully it'll keep coming. But those librarians really do study kids' interests, and they can take you right to that area, and you can check out those books. So, and that way you can have a lot of novelty moving through, and you're serving your child. Which ones do you want more of, or which group genre do you like? So make it fun, make it sticky, as we psychologists say, very reinforcing, and keep it novel, and meet their needs, and keep the loving moments going. Stay positive. Okay, how do I build my child's self-esteem without being afraid of I'm overpraising in a way that will build a budding narcissist? Whoa, that's a good one. That's a little bit like Jessica's question about, oh, will they, if I build such a you're special or your only child, will they, think it's all about them? That's what we're afraid of sometimes with treating our child with all this love and attention. Okay, first, let's talk about praise, because people really, I had one question once when I wrote the Getting to Calm for toddlers, or 4 to 7-year-olds. They said, one person said, I thought we weren't supposed to praise. And I'm like, oh my goodness. We go from overpraise to no praise. Praise, I have another acronym, sorry, it's a day for acronym. Acronym, GOLD, we want it to be GOLD. Genuine, occasional, limited, and after a decent effort. Okay, so it needs to not be good game, and they lost the game by 15 points, right? Good game, that's not even honest, right? We wanted to build them up, but you say, ooh, hard game. I thought, but that pass that you did in the second quarter, because I know you've really been working on passing and not going for goal. That was awesome. Yet, if that's what they're working on, passing instead of just going on goal, and it's specific, right? And you don't do it all the time, and it's honest, then it's gold kind of praise. So the brain is like like at the airport, I'm grasping for words here, their air traffic controller. It's like an air traffic controller, like what's coming in, what's going on. And then we go to default mode where we're kind of bored and disinterested or distracted. And so we're looking for new things. And if you say, good job, good job, good job, it doesn't even hear it anymore. It also can make me kind of nervous. I've seen it in my office. Good job, good job. And if you are limited, specific, genuine, occasional, limited, and after a decent effort, they really perk up and go, oh, wow, I got acknowledged for all that effort I went into to write that paragraph. Because mom said, oh, that first paragraph with that opening was beautiful, And sometimes with teenagers, because they don't want to be close to you, they don't want that cloying, loving, adoring mother so much. You can just walk through the kitchen. I call them drive-bys. Just walk through and say, wow, that opening paragraph was awesome, So that praise is good in that fashion. In terms of grandiosity or all about meism or whatever, there have been some research, and one lit review found that if you give them negative feedback on occasion when appropriate, in the context of unconditional love, I love you exactly the way you are, and I know you want to always do better, but the bedrock is I love you exactly. They're not going to be nervous that when they fail, that they've fallen off some sort of pedestal, because, it's there no matter what. But you do give negative impact, negative feedback, because, you need to be nicer to your aunt when she comes over for dinner, and that you were on your phone, and, negative feedback is okay. That's how they learn too. And thirdly, what they found that I really remember so well is they said, you're giving them support and praise for progress and growth, but not outperforming others. It's their personal best, right? They're trying to compare themselves to themselves, even if they're in the lowest quintile in math. It's like, wow, we learned your math facts, and that was so hard, right? So that's better than, why don't you get in the best and the brightest every time? So those seem to be the ingredients. I'm looking at, okay, I'm going to go to, yeah, so these are such big questions. I'm hoping to answer questions that the mass has here. So I can't get to as many because they're all really big questions. But one of these, to tie it up, was about, a question we've already had, which is, what's the most important thing a parent can do to positively affect the good mental health and happiness for their child now and into the future? I just want to talk about happiness for a second, because you hear all the time, I want my child to be healthy and happy. Do well in school, healthy and happy. Happy is an emotion like joy. It comes and it goes, but it's not an endpoint you get and you maintain, and your child's that way most of the time. Of course, you can tell I'm all about positive emotions, but it wasn't like, I want good mental health and my child to be capable of positive emotions so that they can compensate for the woes and the stressors of their life. It wasn't that, it was happiness. Sometimes I think we focus on that so much. And as I said, I put a whole chapter on character development, because what about being good and caring about other people? But we don't say mental health and moral development or character development. We say happiness. And again, I'm not a Debbie Downer on happiness. It's one of the things we aspire to, but I think it's often the outcome of building mental health and building those 7 building blocks of good outcomes, of well adjustment and getting through school and good work and good relationships. It's maybe a spiritual life as well. It's the outcome of a good life that you'll have more happiness. It's not that you get this state and you stay there. So, I think what you've seen through this talk for 90 minutes is that there are a lot of rough spots. That's the way life is. And we are with them to negotiate those rough spots and obstacles best we can with that secure attachment and care. And then think about the ingredients of a good life and a healthy life, and the good outcomes and the mental health and even the happiness will be the outcome, the best we can make it happen. So on that note, I'm going to thank all of you for your attendance. I want to thank all of the sponsors, and I want to tell you that I hope you come for the next event, which is Stronger Together, a new model for the modern marriage with Nate and Kaylee Clem. So with that, I'll say thank you to you all, and I will see you at the next Parent Ed Talk event. Thank you. Bye.